a Midnight Waffles podcast.
This is BattleStations, a podcast about the Columbus Destroyers and the Arena Football League. I'm Frank Walker. The Destroyers training camp has begun in earnest. If you follow the team's Twitter account or Instagrams or whatnot, starting Sunday morning, you started seeing photos and videos and all that good stuff. So that's just the beginning of what's going to be a pretty good show for us this week, or at least somewhat full. So, I mean, that's obviously the headline of the week. What's going on at training camp? How are things progressing there with the actual team that we'll be playing on the field? And, we decided to bring in someone who would actually have some general knowledge of that. So let's start with our first interview this week. Columbus Destroyers special teams coordinator as well as defensive back coach Stanley Franks. All right, and now here on the BattleStations podcast, Columbus Destroyers associate coach here, Stanley Franks. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good, Frank. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. And as a guy who's kind of, not a lot of Destroyer fans have heard from you, know much about you. I mean, what's your background as far as playing, how you got into coaching?
Well, I grew up for a love of the game. Playing from youth sports to Pop Warner. I was fortunate enough to, go to Long Beach City JUCO and receive a scholarship to the University of Idaho from there. Ended up going free agent to the San Diego Chargers, where I spent a coffee break. But and then once I went from there, 2009 or so, I played with the Spokane Shock. I was fortunate enough to be on a great team to win the Arena Cup that year. That same year in 2009, I went up to the CFL with the BC Lions, and I was up there for a couple of years. 2011, 12, blew my knee out. I was also fortunate enough to be on a great team and win a championship, a great cup with those guys. Blew my knee out. It was a serious injury. Had to have 3 surgeries. Ended up going to emergency surgery that night with potential of getting my leg amputated.
Whoa!
And it was a game-changing experience. But it was a blessing in disguise. And pretty much got into coaching from there. Andy Olsen gave me a shot back with the Spokane Shock, handling the defensive backs. And, I've always helped out with the local high schools and stuff, go back to my high school. And, I just enjoy coaching and being around the young players. And, I spent about a year and a half there. And then I got a shot with Idaho State, which was one of the rivals from the University of Idaho that I went to, from Coach Kramer. And I spent about 3-4 years up there, and then the BC Lions brought me back. I was fortunate enough to be under, one of the legendary coaches, Wally Bono, and, Mark Washington. He was really, in my corner pushing for me, and, I pretty much the defensive backs, quality control guys for them for about 2 years. Last year was this change in the guards, and I ended up here with Coach Stark, which, been a great experience so far.
All right. And how specifically did you get to Columbus? Did you work with Coach Stark before, or had he just reached out to you, or what happened there?
No, I never directly worked with Coach Stark. Me and Coach Harold, Clay Harold, we were on the staff together in Spokane for that year, about that year and a half. So, I'm familiar with Clay and his style, and, Coach Stark was an opponent, and he's real good friends with another guy named Ryan Rickmaden. I've heard great things about him, and those guys pretty much were probably was the big and giving me this opportunity.
All right, so it sounds like you got here from, kind of the same way a lot of coaches do. You've worked with other people, they've worked with you, and just kind of know the quality of guy you are and want to bring you in.
Yes, sir, man.
All right, so with training camp going on, what's your day in, day out looking like? If someone were to look over your shoulder for a day, what's your day looking like right now?
Well, we call it the camp grind. We're up about 5-something. Getting a quick workout in, breakfast, and then, we're meeting, as a staff, making sure everything's detailed and planned throughout practice. Just talking about how players are progressing. The players, we'll start our team meeting with them at 7. Shortly break up to individual and position meetings from there. And then, guys are, grabbing breakfast, and then we're on the practice field ready to get ready. Start around 8:55 or so, a couple hours of some fast, quality work, trying to get reps and, improve from the day prior. And then, yeah, as coaches. Then we grab lunch and we're back watching the film and meet around 1:45 with the guys, and then about an hour and a half from there, and then we're back watching film again with the coaches and making decisions on how the day went, with how guys performed and everything from there.
All right, and as a coach, your focus is the defensive backs and to my understanding, special teams, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, working with the secondary and special teams.
All right. So what on I mean, I know you haven't had a game day yet with this staff specifically, but I mean, what kind of stuff would you be doing on game day as far as what, I mean, obviously Coach Salk, he's calling plays and whatnot, but what are you doing as that's all going on?
Well, of course, the secondary, is big coverage-wise. You want to see the route concept that, they're hitting you with, the tendencies, making sure we're getting the checks. Coach Harrell, he's the defensive coordinator, helping him. We'll be in constant communication, through the headphones and everything. And just, route combination-wise, what we're doing with the jack, the timing, any type of screen gain or anything like that. So we're just in constant communication and making sure, the DBs are on point from a secondary perspective. And then, obviously the special team, the kicking, the field goal part of it, kickoff and the kick return, trying to get points on the board and, trying to pin them within the 5-yard line from there.
And right now you're in training camp. So I would assume most of this is focusing on the guys you got in the room, who you've got working out and watching them. Has there been any kind of looking ahead a little bit, trying to get tape on what maybe coordinators in the league are doing right now, trying to get a little prepped for the other teams in the league, or is everything focused right now on destroyer players?
Oh no, we're definitely that's the main goal. We know we have Albany, to start out with. So besides evaluating the talent that we have in training camp, they're our next priority. So we definitely watch film on them, and this staff and we're familiar with a couple guys over there, and the personnel that they have. So we're definitely trying to get a jump and everything that we're doing, we're preparing in mind, and we're not just facing each other in camp. We want to be great and be technician and stuff for Albany. So they're definitely on the mind, definitely preparing for them as coaches.
All right, and I know that the roster this year, and a lot of arena football teams kind of look like this year, where there's a lot of guys who maybe don't have a lot of arena football experience. How do you coach a guy who's played defensive back? You played it in the CFL where the field's just huge. I mean, you've played it in normal American football where the regular field, and now in that indoor game. How do you coach a guy on those differences, or do you make any changes to a guy's game from the outdoor to the indoor game, that sort of thing?
Oh yeah, I think that's what sets a lot of that's a lot of rookies' downfall. Is they're just not familiar with the game and the little details that are different. There's different angles. Breaking with the arena routes. Most guys, you'll be surprised, are they not even familiar with handling the motion. The high motion, and that's the biggest things that DBs have the problem with, is taking the high motion, because everything's been stationary up until college. And obviously they get a shot in the NFL and they bounce back. Fortunately, some guys come from CFL backgrounds, so they're a little more familiar with handling the motion, and they usually pick up the game quicker. But they still have to get used to the route concepts. You'll see some routes here that you think you're just drawing up in the dirt, but they're legit arena routes and staples of the arena football game.
All right, yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. That'd be the biggest thing, that that receiver being able to run right at the line of scrimmage and being at a full head of steam when you're trying to play him. I mean, that'd be a real challenge for a defensive back there. Did you find that challenging when you first jumped to the indoor game?
Oh yeah, no doubt. Challenges to say the least. That's why I joke with the cats. They're the best athletes and they have the hardest job on the field. But it's true to a certain extent, and I really believe that. It takes a special cat. With a 205 receiver running full head of steam at you, and sometimes we're asking those guys to come down and catch them and press technique. It really takes a different type of cat to do those things.
And with this being arena football, and a lot of guys being either because there was the open tryout, there was these are guys who've maybe played some NFL ball or some high college ball. I mean, when you're in training camp right now, what are you seeing at a compete level for these guys, or polish? I mean, do a lot of these guys looks like they've been working before this, or does this seem like some of these guys are a little rusty, or what are you seeing out of guys in training camp?
I would say, guys, they definitely come in shape. But, if you ever play ball and thing, there's nothing that you can quite, you can't duplicate being in football shape. No matter how hard you train, what type of conditioning you're doing, there's nothing like being in football shape. From the pounding that your body takes, from planning and breaking as the defensive back, and just your lungs, it takes the time to get in game shape. So I think that's the biggest thing that you notice off top. But these guys, they're professional athletes. They come in shape, being physical. And for the most part, we have a pretty veteran group in the secondary. And you can tell, that they've worked their craft and, they understand the arena game for the most part. So it's just perfecting the details and getting the scheme down and everything from there.
All right, and talking about, today we heard was the first day that there was pads, that there was hitting in practice.
Yeah.
Coach Salk let it be known that there was actually a fight today. What happened there? Were you in part of that, or what happened there?
Man, the age I'm at, I'm like, man, I need to stay out of that thing. But your instincts just, you run in there and try to break the guys up. But it's good to see a little fight, a little brotherly love, and get the pads clicking. And, the competitive sides come out, and, it's about imposing your will on another player, that's going to happen. So it's a good sign to see. I think the guys, they handled it very well. It was a quick little fight. They broke it up, and they went about the next play, picked up the intensity, and, didn't linger in the locker room or nothing like that. And that's the way I feel it's supposed to happen. And, I think it's a good pickup for practice. And, everybody's out there fighting for jobs. So, and literally, sometimes you got to fight for your job.
No, we kind of know that. Here in Columbus, we've got a team in the National Hockey League playoffs this year, and you're used to seeing that. Two guys just slug at each other, and then they get in the penalty box, look at each other, and smile, knowing, well, that's just how the game goes sometimes. So
exactly, yeah.
All right, so as someone who's, you've been around the arena game, you've been around the outdoor game, you've been around, again, the Canadian game, for someone who, the Destroyers are coming back to Columbus, someone's kind of getting into this and like, I'm going to go watch a few games. What would you say to them to kind of watch that's different than watching the outdoor game? If you're trying to pick up on the strategies or whatnot, what is it that's that one of that hardest things to adjust to in your mind?
I think, they'll be excited to see the high motion, having a guy run full speed. And I think, they enjoy the special teams aspect, the kick, bouncing on the net, the football bouncing from the net and the returner having to receive that. And, you have some big plays from there. And, I don't think people realize how fast the game is just because of the dynamics of the field. So everything is happening fast, and these guys are running full speed. And, those boards, they're out there. They give a little bit, but the game is really fast and some big hits on the board. So I think, just pay attention to that and just enjoy that and then start, getting more details about the game.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight, Coach Frank. It's been a pleasure, and hope we hear from you more as the season goes on.
No doubt. I appreciate your time, too. Thanks for having me.
Now, training camp isn't the only big news that broke this week. On Tuesday morning, the Arena Football League unveiled the new uniforms for this year. And we decided to talk with someone who had, was actually at the press conference and got to see everything live. And please welcome to BattleStations, Jon Stark here from Arena Fan and AFL Tonight.
Hey there, Frank. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, thanks for being on. And for those who weren't aware, Jon was there Monday in Washington, D.C. at the unveiling of these new uniforms. So just kind of hopping right into it there. First of all, just kind of overall, what was the event like? From what it looked like it was maybe in one of the practice basketball courts, or what was kind of the setting? What was there?
You are spot on with that. It was on one of the practice basketball courts, and they had it set up very nicely. They had food put out for the media. The seating was comfortable. They had professional music, and they had partitions, like giant ceiling draperies hanging, and I guess you could pull those back and forth to create a larger, smaller area.
All right. So just kind of a nice setup there was it at Capital One Arena, or where was it?
It was at Capital One Arena on the event level.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. So, overall, what was the press conference like as far as introducing them there? I know there was a plan for a live stream that apparently went awry. But what was just the general feeling of the press conference from the people who were in it?
Beforehand, during, and after, it was very upbeat and everything was positive. Everyone was in a great mood. Everyone wanted to talk with everyone. I guess for some people, it may have been a while since they had caught up. And everyone was excited to get started. And when they finally did get started, I'm not quite sure what happened with the live stream. Did it ever come on?
No, from what we were seeing, it was, there was never a live stream that came up or was ever part of it from what anybody could tell. I don't, to this point, I still don't think anybody from the AFL responded to all the comments or anything that were on Facebook about the live stream.
Okay, well, I guess I could give you and your listeners a quick little walkthrough from my memory about, I guess, kind of like a timeline of what happened. So you had Wes Hall. He's one of the on-air announcers for the AFL last season, and I think he's going to be back this season. He was the MC. So he introduced, Commissioner Bo, Ted Leonsis, CEO Nathan Dorton from Phenom Elite, and Ron Jaworski as well, and they all spoke for a bit about the league and the uniforms, and they kept it brief and short. They focused on the uniforms and they got right to it. They announced all the teams individually. They had home and away, as you guys may have seen on social media, walk out together in pairs, unveiling the Valor last, and they just kind of said, this is it, and we're very excited to get the season started, and for the next 5 to 10 minutes, you're open to take pictures and everyone come up front and talk. And that's what myself and the rest of the media and team members, staff members did. And after that, some more chit chat, and the event wrapped up before, I think, 11 a.m. and everyone got on with their day.
All right. Sounds like it was pretty straightforward, straight business and to the point on what was happening. And I will throw out there, just for fans who are listening to this, maybe haven't had a good look at them yet, I think the best overall look of the day as far as getting to see the uniforms well was actually John Adams, the AFL president's Twitter account. He did a couple of tweets that were just kind of the photos like they were, like the uniforms just kind of laid out on a football field. And I think it's the best overall look of them I've seen. But did they? Did you get any interesting nuggets about the uniforms from the people that were there? Or was there any interesting thing that that the listeners may appreciate hearing about them?
Well, no interesting nuggets per se on the uniforms, but they did tell me that they are excited about expansion. That's a big thing that keeps coming up, and I will say that the uniforms look great in person, and that I've seen and heard a lot of comments on the Soul uniforms so far on social media already. A lot of I'd say negative. I like them. I think that they could have done a little bit better, but everyone has their own opinion.
So yeah, let's get into them a little bit and your view of them, because you saw them live and in person, and it's one of those things where I remember, especially as a kid, I don't know if you remember this as well, but back when they used to do a lot of video game magazines out there like GamePro and stuff. I'm sure I know most of that's moved online now, but when I was a kid, it was always kind of hard to tell because you'd see like a still image of a video game graphic, and that really didn't tell you what it looked like when you saw it in a game moving.
Right.
So, as far as in person, what was your initial impression of the uniforms from the different teams?
I think that the Monumental Group, the Baltimore and Washington team, and Columbus as well, I think that those three uniforms sort of stick together with last year's uniforms, what we saw with the Valor and the Brigade. And I think the Columbus uniform sort of mirrors and stays close to the Blackjacks uniform. And then you've got the trifecta group with the Blackjacks uniforms, the Albany Empire uniforms, and the Philly uniforms. I think they are a little bit louder and more eccentric. Like, hey, look at us, we're over here. And I'm a fan of that. I like how they worked in the team's logos onto the actual fabric of the jersey itself, where you've got the shield for the Empire behind the numbers on the front, and you've got the Souls logo all over the front of their home and away jerseys.
I didn't realize till I was looking at him just now that whole thing about the Empires, how how the shield is, kind of in there with it, and I like that a lot more. I also really liked the touch of the almost like the Centurion. I don't know. The only word I can think of off the top of my head is skirt, but kind of that the traditional kind of leather thing that you think of hanging from a Roman Centurion.
Yeah,
on
that's
the pants there.
That sort of goes along with their Mac and Jack mascots for the Empire.
Yeah, and then the Soul have that. The Soul ones are the dark one. I like a lot more than the light one. I'm not sure what it is about it. I think it just looks better overall, but I am interested to see these things moving, and to see if that's going to be any difference in them. But yeah, I guess I didn't think of it either till I saw kind of how you interpreted it there. But the ones the monumental kind of, I guess you could say, teams, the Destroyers, the Brigade, and the Valor, they are kind of much more just straightforward, whereas the ones on the other side have a little more flash to them. So that's kind of a cool differentiation between the two teams there.
Yeah, and there was another thing I noticed that I haven't seen or really talked to anybody yet about, and while I'm looking through the photos again as we speak, the Valor are the only team as of right now that I know that have a home and away jersey that both say Valor on the front. The rest of the teams are either say Seoul and Philly, Albany and Empire separately, or Baltimore and Brigade separately, respectively, for home and away jerseys.
Yeah, some interesting little differences there, and Tim Capper pointed out a cool difference to me on the Columbus one that I hadn't realized until he pointed out. The stripe down the middle of the Destroyer's helmet is actually it's the little symbol that makes that up. It's the outline of the state of Ohio flag.
Oh, okay. I just noticed that too.
Yeah, it's got that. Because Ohio's the one. I think it's the one state that doesn't have the straight rectangular flag. It's got that kind of pennant look to it. But okay, so in person, I was
impressed. I think that they took it up a notch over last year. I know some people might say, well, how's that possible? They had Under Armour make the uniforms last year, and I think they were able to take it to another level of customization going with Phenom Elite, to where they were able to get into some finite details, get team specific, really accessorize, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I would have to agree with that, and I think it was I also think it was something I heard about in the interview your guys' podcast did with the president there about kind of the switch to Phenom from Under Armour is very similar to the issue going from, I think it was Spalding, to this team issue for the footballs, is that if you're not somebody's first priority, go with somebody who's going to give you more of what you want, or maybe do things a little differently. And I think that might have been some of the idea behind going with Phenom there, as opposed, for what happened there. But yeah, it's a very cool setup. I'm the more I'm looking at it, especially the Destroyer ones, the more I'm really liking them. I think the move to the black and the black and white and silver was very nice. And I do appreciate they kept the same CD logo on for the helmets there. So if you were, I guess, kind of closing this out here, if there was one that you would have to pick and say, you know what, I think that's the one I like best, or this is the one that surprised me most, which one would you kind of point to if you were doing like a superlatives there of these uniforms?
So the one that surprised me most, I think, Philadelphia's home, the Soul in the all blue with the black logoing. And my favorite's going to have to be the Valor home, and it's just because I'm a big Washington Valor fan.
We do not discourage homerism here on the show, so that's good. That's not bad at all there. So
how about you?
I mean, if I'm trying to stay impartial when I look at them here, the ones that what makes it hard for me is I'm always kind of a sucker for red, white, and blue. So I mean the Valors I liked last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was picking base straight on what I've seen today, I mean I like the Destroyers a lot because I like the black helmet. I like the kind of again having the old logo on it. But there's something about the Empire ones I really like. I don't know what it is. It might be that logo in the back. It might be all the little touches on it. I also find it interesting that the blackjacks and of course I also like the blackjacks have the little card shapes on the side stripes there, but I find it interesting that the blackjacks and the Empire each have a third jersey. And I don't know if there was a reason behind those two teams getting it and not others, or what the plan there was with that, but I don't know. I find that interesting why they decided for two teams to go with a third jersey and not for the other four there.
That's a good question. It's almost something to look at, maybe cross-reference on the actual season schedule and see what games are on what dates, and if it's close to like a holiday weekend, maybe they'll do something special.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So that's I don't know. I'm pretty happy with them overall. The one that I'm reserving judgment on is the Soul, because I want to see what it looks like on the field, moving around, playing in it, to see if I'm going to say, yeah, that's still kind of, because there's the question of, is it a step too far, is it being far too busy? But I don't know. I want to see it. I want to see it actually on the field before I make too harsh judgment one way or the other on it.
Sure. Yeah. Like I was saying, it's very loud, like very high vis.
Yeah, which there's a history of an arena football, so you could almost call that a throwback in a way. But all right, well, thank you very much, John, for being on the show here today. We do appreciate it. I mean, if people are looking for you or what you write or you talking, where's the best places to find you?
Best two places to find me are on Twitter and Instagram at 553. That's the number 5 FIFTY and the number 3 553.
All right, thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Frank. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, so those are some really good thoughts there from Jon Stark of Arena Fan, and I would feel like I was remiss if I did not address what, for probably a decent amount of arena football fans, is the elephant in the room when it comes to those uniforms, which is the fact that the Arena Football League did publish there was going to be some type of Facebook live stream of the unveil, and then that never happened. I remember kind of refreshing Facebook, looking at things, thinking, when's this going to pop up? And seeing the amount of comments grow and grow until we got to the point where it was obvious it was over, because photos were coming out and it was showing people just kind of walking around shaking hands, and there'd never been a live stream. And to my understanding of it, even as of now, I don't think the Arena Football League ever addressed the issue of what happened with that, whether it was just and I'm sure there was just some technical error, maybe they couldn't do it. I don't even know. That's part of the frustration I think a lot of fans feel. Not only did it not happen, but no one ever addressed it. I mean, as of the last thing I saw, there were 64 comments on that Facebook post, and no one from the Arena Football League, to my knowledge, addressed it. We did reach out for a slight comment, just didn't get anything. So we'll see. And again, it's a small thing. I don't think it's that big a deal, but it is the kind of thing that when you are growing back from a league that was on the edge, you want the little things to show. I mean, that's something that major leagues do. Their little things go right. I mean, tonight the NHL is doing their draft lottery presentation thing. And if something goes wrong, there's going to be a lot of problems there, because they want things to go right. They want it to look like a professionally run organization. And that's part of it. When you're going to do an event, you want it to happen. You want it to look good. So it's just one of those things. Now, this could be something where if the streaming service they're going to do, or the streaming stuff goes off well and the rest of the season goes off fine, then this will be lost. It'll be a footnote. No one will care. But if there's other issues, people will point back to this one and say, yeah, they couldn't do the uniform unveiling right. So we'll see how it goes. I hope everything goes well. I am kind of unabashed in saying I want the Arena Football League to succeed. I want the Columbus Destroyers to win every game in it. That sort of thing. So, I mean, I'm not putting on airs here about what my actual biases are. I want the league to succeed. It's just little things like that sometimes can get in the way. my own thoughts on the uniforms. You heard a decent amount of them during the interview there. One thing I didn't mention that I wanted to was on the Destroyers uniforms themselves. When the team decided to go with a different color scheme, which I understood all the logical reasoning of, part of me thought, oh, I'm going to be sad to not see the red, white, and blue. And so I was wanting the uniforms to be good so that I would kind of move on past that. And I don't know if it's necessarily the uniforms that way or just the fact that we're seeing Destroyers again. But I'm really liking the uniforms. I'm able to, maybe it's the fact that they kept the cool CD logo on the side that I'm a fan of it, and I'm happy to see it. I really can't wait to see these uniforms in action and these guys actually playing in full uniform and what'll happen there. So I'm really quite encouraged with what we saw there. The ones that seem to be garnering the most, what happened here, is easily the Philadelphia Soul. As I said, the dark one I kind of liked. We'll see where it goes. I can't guarantee they'll be. I don't know. Maybe it'll be something where they get out on the field and I'm like, oh no, these were wrong. Everybody was right. These were wrong from the beginning. Or maybe they'll get on the field and I'll think, you know what, with guys moving in them and playing and everything else, this looks fine. So we'll see where it goes from there. I'm excited to see where everything is going from there. Now, opened up to do listener questions this week, which I was really kind of surprised at the response. Thank you, guys. I got a few questions back this time around. One of the first questions, I think I had a couple from Dogman there. One of them was, any reports from training camp coaches, feelings about how things have started, how the players are competing, and overall what shape were the guys coming into camp. You heard that from Coach Franks. He obviously would know it better than me, being there every day and knowing what's going on. So I'll let what he said kind of stand as the answer to that question. And then a few other questions on this from Strong Island Superfan, so at Strong Island SF there on Twitter. Who do you think will take the championship this year? Also, which team do you feel is the best defense? Now, I've said before on the show, because there's two expansion teams, because everyone is a free agent, it's hard to give you a solid, this team's good, this team's going to be ready to go. If you put me in a situation where I absolutely had to pick someone today, and I know as being a Destroyers podcast, people may not like this, but I'd probably go with Albany. And I'll say that for a couple of reasons. One, they are bringing back a lot of guys on a team that had the best record in the league last year. Now, granted, a best record in the league, they had 8-4, and I think two teams were 7-5. So it's not like they were heads and away, far and away better than everyone. But they were a really good team. They're bringing back who is, at this point, I believe, probably the best quarterback in the AFL in Tommy Grady. And the news that if Malik Jones does not get an NFL contract after his performance in the AAF, that the expectations will be back in Albany. I would have to say, if I'm choosing today, it would be Albany. Now, the next question ties into what I'm thinking, and I think Destroyer fans will be happier to hear this one. Who do I think is the best defense? I think it's Columbus. At this point, Columbus seems to be building almost from a defense-first mentality. Between Varmasoni, between having guys who've played actually somewhat recent NFL experience and done pretty good in the NFL on the defensive line. We heard from Coach Salk almost from day one about building from the inside out, and I really think they've done that. I think they've got a really good defense. Again, until the games are played, this might be something that you play back to me in a month, and I'm like, oh, I was off, but we'll see. Now, I would also say that Columbus is a bit of a wild card. In discussions I've had with people who know the league better, it's a question of, I think you actually heard from Coffee Jones last week, and with people I've talked with, what it comes down to Columbus is Greg McGee, or is whoever they end up playing at quarterback, is that guy the answer? Because if he is, there's people who think Columbus can make a run this year. They're that good. They've got a lot of talent around them, and they do. They could be a very good team. They could become very dangerous very quickly. And I don't know. Greg McGee, in his time with Philadelphia last year, played pretty well. He could be the guy. And if he is, then I feel real high on Columbus's chances. So I'm pretty happy with where that could potentially go. A question here from on Twitter from at Circ_do_Sinkyu, I guess. Yeah, she responded to AFL Fan Zone on this. Yeah, who thought the Soul jerseys were a good idea? Yeah, I don't know. Again, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I don't know. We'll see. Again, I want to see him in motion. I use the example of video games, or this also happens with movies where someone will take a still shot of a special effect in a movie and we'll all be like, oh, that looks terrible. But once it's moving in a movie and seen the way it's intended to be seen, it looks fine. Maybe the Soul jerseys look that way. I don't know. I know that sometimes with these jerseys, and I hope that Phenom did this, they actually put them on guys and had them run around a field to see what they looked like. So we'll see. I mean, there have been teams, obviously, that have done bad uniforms before, so maybe this is one, maybe it's not. From some of our Facebook stuff, Ryan Walker had a couple questions. One, has or will the league ever consider returning to the original Iron Man format and substitution rules? I don't think this is going to be happening anytime soon, for a couple of reasons. I think the league sees a higher standard of play when you have those specialties. So I think that's part of it. And I think it helps. Not that someone who hadn't watched arena football before would not understand guys playing both ways. I think people just kind of get that. It wouldn't be a big barrier for people coming into the sport. But I think there's that higher level of play. And I've got some feelers out on this one, but this is just speculation on my side. I think, because in most professional sports there's a players' union, the AFL has a players' union. I think the players' union would push back big time, unless salaries went way up, because that's talking about cutting jobs from arena football player teams. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's something where that's probably gone. That's just my inclination and things I've kind of gathered. And again, I've got, if I think something's changing, I'll let you know. I know a lot of people who have been with arena football for a long time cite that as something that they kind of miss about the sport. And if you listen to the Good Seat Still Available interview with Foster, he mentioned that as a facet of the sport that he thought they should have kept. So maybe there's something to it. Maybe it'll come back. I just don't know. His second question, as the league begins to expand and ultimately reach a point of having more teams qualify for the postseason, will the league move away from the 2-game playoff series in favor of the more traditional playoff format? Yeah, that's going to happen. I think the 2-game playoff series was a necessity last year and somewhat this year. The reason I say that is, I think that when the league is sitting down, because we've talked about this with the league being a single entity ownership structure, where essentially the league owns the teams and then is going out and adding new teams and that sort of stuff. And they're the ones who run it all. I think the idea of having 3 rounds of playoffs was important to them for gate receipts. I think they were trying to I think this year it's the same thing. I think part of it is gate receipts, because if you go buy Destroyer season tickets right now, it says that for the price that they list, you are getting 8 games. Now, if you looked at the regular season schedule, there are only 6. So what that does is the Destroyers, if they make the playoffs, which 4 out of the 6 teams will, you've got an extra home game in there that you can sell a ticket to. And if they get to the Arena Bowl and they happen to be the host, there's another game you can sell tickets to. So I think in a small league, that's something to remember with these kind of smaller leagues. Ticket revenue is huge. It's an interesting concept in that in football playoffs are more ripe for upsets than a lot of other sports because it's just the one game off to see what happens. I think as the league grows, you'll see it go away, because if you try and maintain that 2-game series, once you get into 12 teams, if there's an 8-team playoff, then the playoffs are going to start dragging. And I think any more than 3 or 4 weeks of playoffs is going to be a problem for the league. I think 4 is as far as you would go, because that's kind of what the NFL is. And I think that's about as long as you could take playoffs in a football format and make it work. So, yeah, I think that will go away probably next year, because they're talking about expanding, and it seems like everybody's using the number at least 10. I guess if it's 10 and 6 teams make it, they may keep it next year. I think once you get to 12, you got to get rid of it. But I could honestly even see them going, if they go to 10 teams next year, an 8-game playoff or an 8-team playoff, in which case then you'd get rid of it. But that's just my own inclination. I haven't heard anything yet about it, but that would be my thought. And the Last question here from OJ Bruin here on Facebook. Will the AFL ever come back to OKC? I didn't look to see what Oklahoma City's history is with the Arena Football League. I will say this. It's a city that, if you listen to the episode a few episodes back where me and Scott Soares kind of went through our list of teams, we didn't mention Oklahoma City. Now, I think both of us had the same reasoning behind that, which was the list we did were who are the next 10, and we kind of kept it Midwest and then South because we were talking about there being this, kind of making these little travel hubs that made it easier for the teams to run. Now, I think the next step after you do Midwest and South would be kind of a... Because right now, if you're not familiar with the arena, with the nature of indoor football, kind of the next biggest league, the Indoor Football League, is really concentrated in kind of the plain states as far as like kind of Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and then they have a section that's pretty far west when you get to like Arizona, Phoenix. They got an Arizona team, a Phoenix team, they got a team in San Diego. So I mean, it's kind of split up there. And then there's other sorted arena football teams. I think the next expansion after you would do a Midwest and then a Southern would be to kind of do like a Texas area. And Oklahoma City could definitely fit into that. And Oklahoma City is a great candidate because they've got a major arena that the NBA team plays in, which is something the Arena Football League wants. They want to play in NBA and NHL style arenas. And it's a city that is large enough, has a large enough population base. The seasons don't overlap too much unless the Thunder were to make a deep playoff run. And it doesn't have other sports that overlap, but it's got the economy that it could handle an arena football team. And you could see there being an Oklahoma team, depending on where else in the region wants to do one. I mean, maybe the Arena Football League goes back to Austin. I would think San Antonio would be a location they'd think about. I'm not super hyped about jumping right into Dallas because Dallas has so many teams and so many sports. But I could see San Antonio, I could see Oklahoma, I could see Austin being potential candidates out there. So maybe. And then one other thing. I mean, we got through the questions, but this question about expansion led to something that I found kind of funny. So last year, this article seemed to get some renewed interest this week around online. An article written back in August of 2018 from Jacob, I want to say it's Bogage of the Washington Post, and it was about the Washington Valor when they won the Arena Football or the Arena Bowl last year, and it focuses a lot on what Ted Leonsis is doing. And there's a couple paragraphs I wanted to kind of emphasize on. Leonsis recruits prospective franchise owners. He hosted Tom Kratzosis, founder of watch company Shinola Detroit, as a personal guest at the Arena Bowl with the hopes of expanding the league to Motor City. He's trying to convince Philadelphia franchise owners to start a second team in Atlantic City. Well, that happened. Trying to get Dan Gilbert, owner of the NBA's Cavaliers and AFL's Gladiators, to play through arena renovations. Hasn't happened, but the team may still be on the way back. Considering buying another franchise himself to put in Richmond. So when me and Scott did our episode a few back there, Richmond, he mentioned Richmond, and this is multiple times we've heard about Detroit. So because we had the expansion question about Oklahoma City, I wanted to kind of shine a light on that article because I thought it was just an interesting little tidbit because part of it proved out true. We got Atlantic City. Will we get Richmond? I don't know. I mean, it'd be an interesting gateway to the South kind of city in the way that Columbus has kind of been this gateway to the Midwest. So we'll see what happens. But I do want to thank you all for listening to the show this week. Hopefully we've got a lot more good stuff for you next week. I almost forgot to mention, this Saturday, if you can, get out to Hilliard. The Destroyers are doing an open scrimmage. I want to say it's at 9:30, so or maybe it's 9 to 10:30. But yeah, get out there, check on the website, check on Twitter, and thanks for listening, folks. Thank you for listening to Battle Stations.